be startled, but I have to tell you, sometimes being up here behind this pulpit, it's not that far away, but it feels really disconnected from y'all. Like, really. So I'm just going to come down here because I feel like I just want to be closer today. Is that okay? All right. Well, I thought I should ask. Uh, I think we could all agree that there are moments in life where we find ourselves at a crossroads, a turning point. Maybe there's two or more paths laid out before us, and you only get to choose one. Sometimes the decision to be made at these crossroads is obvious. You know where it is you need to go, and you know how you're going to get there, or maybe you think you do. Other times, choosing which way to go can feel impossibly complicated. I'm reminded of one particular crossroad of sorts in Seattle's Queen Anne neighborhood near SPU. I came across it only days after moving to the city from Kansas. And as you might imagine, the Kansan in me was shocked to come across an intersection that had not one, not two, not three or four, but 7 streets intersecting in one spot with no traffic light. You know the one I'm talking about, Eric, over by SPU? Queen Anne Drive, Ray Street, and whatever else they got going on over there. Here, the crossroad was both, or the way to go was obvious and confusing all at the same time. I knew where I needed to go. I had my GPS, but I wasn't quite sure how to get there. I didn't know whose turn it was. So I sat, waited, and then when I thought it was my turn, somebody else went, and uncertainty sets in again. And I thought, well, maybe it's better to just turn around and go home. Whether you're sitting at this intersection in Lower Queen Anne, or you're thinking of another crossroad, one that takes the form of a big life decision, they are all essentially the same. What makes a crossroad is that you can't stay put. You have to make a choice. You have to choose a way. Now, understandably, most of us don't like crossroads. To say that they're disruptive would be an understatement, to say the least. Crossroads force us to ask questions we'd rather postpone, questions like, should I have just taken an Uber? They bring on anxiety, dread, and more sleepless nights than we care to admit. And because they require us to make a choice, they expose the difference between what we want to believe, what we're actually willing to do. But crossroads are also holy places. Almost all of the time in the scriptures, God meets the people in pivotal moments like these. Not at the intersection in Seattle necessarily, but pivotal moments in our lives. Moments when the future is not yet decided and the very next step matters the most. In our reading today from Matthew's Gospel, Jesus brings his disciples to one of these crossroad moments. Now, just before the passage that Erica read, Matthew 16, Peter has a very rare moment of clarity and courage when Jesus asks his disciples, all of them, who do you say that I am? And Peter answers, you are the Messiah, the one whom God has sent to save us. And all the crowd claps and congratulates Peter for his faithful answer. We're so proud of you, Peter. But then, almost immediately, the road before him splits into two. And Jesus begins to tell them that from that point forward, he has to go the way to Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, he would suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, the scribes, the Roman Empire, that there he would be crucified, and on the third day be raised again. For most of us who are familiar with the Easter story, the story of Holy Week and Easter, which is in a little under a month, which is a very kind of not frightening, exciting thing to say. For those of us who are familiar with what the story is to come, this isn't surprising. Yes, Jesus, you are the Messiah. We've been trained to say that. But for Peter and his first disciples, this would have been the exact opposite of what they wanted to hear. How could the one whom God had sent to save them do that work if he lets the Roman Empire put him to death? Doesn't somebody have to be alive in order to save somebody? Peter can't calculate, can't compute. He can't accept the path that Jesus has chosen to follow, and so he pulls Jesus aside and does something I don't recommend you ever do, which is rebuke Jesus. Lord, far be it from me to let that happen from you. I forbid it to happen. Now, this type of distance, this type of encounter is what we're familiar seeing between Peter and Jesus. Peter wants the messianic victory, but he wants the version that doesn't pass through death first. He wants the one that gets that way, gets that victory through might, through the sword, through violence. But Jesus does not choose that path. He refuses the easy road and turns to his disciples and says, all who want to come after me must say no to themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. Those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life will find it. Save your life and die. Lose your life and live. It is one of the great paradoxes of the Christian faith, and it should give you pause each and every time you hear it, no matter how many times you've heard it. To save your life is to lose it, and to lose your life is to find it. Now, let's get one thing right, because we've all seen some of these Hulu documentaries where churches turn into cults. Jesus is not talking about a literal death here. He is in the sense that he literally will die in Jerusalem at the hands of the Roman Empire and the chief priests and the scribes, and we too cease breathing one day, that much is certain. But he's not calling his followers to harm themselves or seek death. Quite the opposite, in fact. Jesus is talking about death through surrender. He is inviting us, calling us, I would even say, in us, to let go of what is preventing us from loving God and our neighbors more wholly, so that the deeper life of God, which we were created for, can finally take root. It is only when we surrender and let those things die can we embrace the life that God has created us for. One of the most vivid images of these surrender moments comes from C.S. Lewis, whose writings we have been using to help interact with the Lenten themes. In his strange and imaginative little book called The Great Divorce, Lewis invites us into a story meant to awaken our theological imaginations. Has anybody read this? A part of it? Heard of it? All right, keep me honest, Trevor. I'm going to try to... Fair enough. The Great Divorce, he's inviting us into a story that awakens our theological imaginations about heaven and hell. And this is really a book that I can't just read. I can't just try to summarize it because it's too rich. So I'm just going to read an excerpt from it to you. and hope that the story speaks for itself. But before I do, let me set the stage. In this story, the narrator finds himself in what Lewis calls the gray town, like the color gray. It's gray like it is today. We know what gray days look like here in the Northwest. But hear the good news. Today and for a long time, the sun will not set before 7 p.m. starting today. And I don't know when it ends. I don't care. I'm not. Thanks for a little more sunshine. Now, the gray town is a dreary, joyless place. Everything is dim and colorless, like on those gray days. It's kind of like those few moments after the sun sets, but it's not completely dark. Maybe I think they call it civil twilight. It's when you need your headlights on, but they don't really work yet because it's still too bright. You can't see the deer that jumps in front of the car. This is how it is all the time and every day in Graytown. Also in Graytown, the houses, they stretch endlessly apart from one another because the inhabitants, they just keep moving farther and farther away from their neighbors. People are constantly fighting, complaining, and arguing with one another. And rather than reconcile, they just get up and move to the latest division on the edge of town where they have all the space they want and need. Now, I'm not making this up. Like this is not 2026, though it sounds like it. It was written in 1950, 51. We're prone to isolation. Now, in Graytown, there is a single bus stop, and the narrator finds himself waiting in line for the bus with a group of other people. Eventually, the bus arrives and takes the gray, kind of ghost-like people. Not ghouly ghosts that scare you, but they're not fully human, the idea. They get on the bus, and the bus takes them to what turns out to be the outskirts of heaven. And when they arrive, the people realize that they found themselves at one of those classic crossroad moments. They have to decide whether they are willing to stay and draw nearer to the heart of God or get back on the bus and go back to Graytown. Seems like an easy decision, right? You'd want to stay, right? Come on. That's the right answer. From our vantage point, it might seem so, but remember, crossroads can be both obvious and confusing at the same time. And sure enough, throughout the story, the narrator observes conversations between these ghostly visitors and angels from heaven who come out to meet these folks, to plead with them to stay, by letting go of those things that bind them, and in doing so, accept the life and joy they were created for. But time and time and time again, the ghosts choose to return to the bus and return to Graytown. So here is one of those interactions. I saw coming towards us a ghost who carried something on his shoulder. Like all the ghosts, he was unsubstantial, but they differed from one another as different kinds of smoke differ. Some had been whitish, this one was dark and oily. What sat on his shoulder was a little red lizard, and it was twitching its tail like a whip and whispering things in his ear. As we caught sight of him, he turned his head to the reptile with a snarl of impatience. "Shut up, I tell you." It wagged its tail and continued to whisper to him. Then the lizard ceased its snarling and began to smile. Then the man turned and started to limp westward, away from the mountains and towards the bus. "Off so soon?" said a voice. The speaker was more or less human in shape, but larger than a man, and so bright I could hardly look at him. His presence smote on my eyes and my body, like the morning sun at the beginning of a hot summer day. "Yes, I'm off," said the ghost. "Thank you for all your hospitality, but it's no good, you see. I told this little chap here that he'd have to be quiet if he came, which he insisted on doing. Of course, his stuff won't do here. I do realize that, but he won't stop. so I shall just have to go home. Would you like me to make him quiet? Said the flaming spirit. An angel, as I now understand. Well, of course I would, said the ghost. Kill him, said the angel, taking a step forward. Oh, look out, you're burning me. Keep away, said the ghost, taking steps backwards. But don't you want him killed? You didn't say anything about killing it at first. I hardly meant to bother you with anything as drastic as that. It's the only way, said the angel, whose burning hands were now so very close to the lizard, asking again, shall I kill it? Well, I'm quite open to consider it. But a new point, you see? I mean, for the moment, I was only thinking about silencing it because it's so embarrassing. May I kill it? We'll have time to discuss that later. There is no time. I ask, may I kill it? Please, please, I never meant to be such a nuisance. Don't bother. Look, it's even gone to sleep on its own accord. I'm sure it will be okay. But thank you ever so much. Honestly, I don't even think there's the slightest necessity. I'm sure I shall be able to keep it in order by now. A gradual process would be far better than killing it. The gradual process is of no use at all. Why are you torturing me? Said the man. How can I let you tear me to pieces? If you wanted to help me, you would have killed the darned thing without asking me, before I knew. If you had, it would have been all over by now. I can't kill it against your will, for it is impossible. So again, I ask, do I have your permission? The angel's hands were almost closed on the lizard, but not quite. And then the lizard began chattering to the ghost, so loud that even I could hear what it was saying. Be careful, it said. He can do what it says. He can. One fatal word, and he will. And then, what would you be? Do I have your permission? Said the angel. I know it will kill me, won't it? Then may I? Well, go on. Get it over with. Do what you like, bellowed the ghost, and then ended by whimpering, God help me. God help me. May I continue? Next moment, the ghost gave a scream of agony, such as I never heard on earth. The burning one closed his crimson grip on the reptile, twisted it, while it bit and writhed and then flung it, broken back, onto the ground. For a moment, I could make out nothing, and then I saw between me and the nearest bush, unmistakably solid, but growing more solid every moment. First the upper arm, and then the shoulder of a man. Then, brighter still and stronger, the legs and hands. The neck and golden head materialized while I watched, and if my attention had not wavered, I should have seen the actual completing of a human. But what distracted me was the fact that at the same moment, something seemed to be happening to the lizard. At first, I thought the operation had failed. Far from dying, the creature was still struggling, still growing. But as it changed, its hinder parts grew rounder. Its tail, still flickering, became a tail of hair that flickered between huge and glossy buttocks. That is what he said, making sure you're still listening. Suddenly, I started back, rubbing my eyes. What stood before me was the greatest horse, stallion I had ever seen, silvery white, but with mane and tail of gold. It was smooth, shining, rippled with swells of flesh and muscle. The new-made man turned and clapped the new horse's neck. The horse nosed his bright body. Horse and master breathed each into the other's nostrils. The man turned and flung himself at the feet of the angel and embraced him. When he rose, I thought his face had shone with tears. but it may have been only the liquid love and brightness which flowed from his heart. Now, mind you, the Great Divorce is not a theological treatise, nor is it meant to be a literal map of heaven and hell. I don't think there'll be a bus stop that takes you to heaven. But it is an allegory, a parable of sorts. We're familiar with those. And in this allegory, Lewis is describing how hell, the gray place, whatever you choose to call it, is the place that we choose to be when we refuse the transformation that Jesus requires of us. When Jesus speaks to his disciples in Matthew 16, he tells them this in a sense. He calls his disciples, he calls us to a choice that despite our propensity to pushing it down the road and avoid these crossroads, it cannot be postponed any longer. The invitation to let the sin which so easily entangles those proverbial devils on our shoulders. Did you get that image? This red lizard whispering into the human's ear is how many folks think of temptation or the tempter, the devil, Satan, whomever, devil whispering in our ears. But also, did you notice how when the lizard dies, it is also transformed into a horse? Why a horse? Well, this lizard had been riding on the man's shoulder for all these years, and now, as they were intended to be, created to be, now this beautiful horse carry the human closer to the heart of God, towards the mountains. So Jesus is calling us not to postpone the choice, but to lay to death those devils on our shoulders, the things that we hold on to, the things which cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven, the fears, the attachments, the patterns that hold us back. Are we willing to trust today that God can transform even that misstep, even that sin, into something that is more true, more honest, more alive than we could have ever imagined? Despite the Great Divorce being about the afterlife, this is not a distant choice. This is not one that you will just make one day. We are at this crossroad. And you define what that crossroad is. There's many to choose from. Jesus is begging us to stay in the presence of God, to be transformed by mercy and grace. And so I'll leave you with this question that I think all could consider today. And Judy's just going to kind of noodle on the piano while we reflect on this. Are there parts in your life of your hopes, your desires that you need to let go, to give again into the hands of God? And if so, how might they be transformed when God gives them back to you?